Something big just changed for wildlife in South America. Ecuador has created this massive wildlife corridor, connecting the Andes Mountains to the Amazon rainforest. For decades, these two ecosystems were cut off from each other. Farming and oil drilling had kept them apart, leaving animals like jaguars with no safe path through. Ecuador's government has now officially protected this stretch of land. That means no more farming or drilling. And that's not the only good news. Scientists in Geneva just transported antimatter for the very first time in history. Chile eliminated a disease that has affected humanity for centuries. And cities around the world are improving their air quality faster than scientists expected. I'm Freddy, this is Good News, and here are the best good news stories of the month. Let's continue with the full story of Ecuador's massive wildlife corridor. The Andes and the Amazon have always been part of the same ecosystem. But from the Amazon floor all the way up to 7,000 meters in the Andes, there are essentially two completely different worlds. And the land between them acts as a vital transition zone for species trying to adapt to a changing climate. Animals move between these environments in search of food, shelter, and suitable habitat. One species that relies on this more than most is the black and chestnut eagle. With as few as 3,000 adults left, it is one of the rarest birds in South America. It lives on the Andean slopes, and it needs a connected forest across different elevations to hunt and breed. But the land between the Andes and the Amazon had already been damaged by farming, road building, and deforestation, which made migration increasingly difficult and dangerous. The new corridor changes that. This stretch of land has now been officially designated as a protected area. That means no more farming or drilling here. And for the first time, wildlife has a continuous safe route between the two ecosystems. It covers over 2,100 square kilometers, roughly the size of Luxembourg. And it connects directly to this national park, one of the most biodiverse places on Earth. In a single hectare of that forest, you find more tree species than in all of North America. And this is part of a bigger effort. Ecuador already created a similar corridor last year, but that one only connected two areas within the Amazon. This is the first to stretch all the way from the Amazon up into the Andes. And it's not just nature that's recovering. 19 cities across Europe, North America, and Asia have cut toxic air pollution by 20% and more. Air pollution is one of the world's biggest threats to human health. It kills around 7 million people every year. That is nearly 6 times the number of people killed in road accidents. And for decades, cities have been at the center of the problem. The concentration of vehicles, factories, and power plants means billions of people breathe toxic air every single day. But cities have also been fighting back. Researchers tracked air quality in cities between 2010 and 2024. And the results are clear. Beijing led the way on fine particles. The city was once one of the most polluted on Earth. Over the past 15 years, the city closed factories, phased out coal, and replaced gas-powered vehicles. The result was a nearly 50% drop in air pollution levels. Amsterdam focused on vehicle emissions. The city cut harmful vehicle emissions by nearly 45% over the same period. Nearly half of the leading cities are in Central and East Asia, and that's partly because they started from the worst air quality of all. But their success also shows that cleaner air is possible even in the world's fastest growing cities. And over in New Zealand, a bird that was once on the edge of extinction is now having its biggest breeding season on record. It is called the Kākāpō, the world's heaviest parrot and the only one that cannot fly. New Zealanders love it so much, it is the only bird that has won Bird of the Year twice. But when predators like cats and stoats arrived in New Zealand, the population collapsed to just 51 birds. A recovery program moved every single remaining bird to predator-free islands and monitored each nest individually. And slowly but surely, it worked. Today, there are 236 of them. And this year, for the first time in 4 years, they are breeding again. They only do so when the rimu, a native tree in New Zealand, produces enough fruit to feed their chicks. That only happens once every 2 to 4 years. 247 eggs have been laid and 57 chicks have hatched so far, making it the biggest breeding season on record. New Zealand's Department of Conservation set up a live camera. More than 100,000 people have already tuned in to watch. I will link it in the description. So, a bird once on the edge of extinction now has a small global fanbase. Staying in the animal world, Indonesia just made a landmark decision for animal welfare. Because elephant rides have just been made illegal across the entire country. That includes all zoos and conservation centers, where rides have long been most common. Indonesia welcomed around 15 million international tourists last year, and elephant rides have long been a popular activity. But what many tourists don't realize is that these rides cause the animals real suffering. The back of an elephant is simply not designed to carry weight. It leads to chronic pain, spinal damage, and open wounds. That is why Indonesia decided to act. Any venue that continues offering rides will lose its operating permit. Bali's Mason Elephant Park was one of the last venues still offering rides, and it has now stopped as well. Now let's take a look at good news for our planet. The global trade of plastic waste has fallen by more than 2/3 over the last decade. Now, before we get into that, I want to mention something important. Every video on this channel is carefully researched and written by real people, Michael and Jake, and brought to life by our talented editor Jason. Their work takes a huge amount of time, and honestly, it would not be possible without sponsors. That is why I quickly want to thank DeleteMe for sponsoring this video. There's this whole industry of data brokers that legally collect and sell your personal information. Your name, email, phone number, even your travel history. And here's a real example of what all that data can be used for. In late 2025, New York passed a law targeting something called personalized pricing. Basically, companies can use your data to change the prices you see online. We're talking things like showing higher prices to someone who usually buys expensive clothes, or raising hotel prices if you've already spent a lot on flights. The law now requires companies to disclose when a price was set using your personal data. Luckily, when it comes to data brokers, we have rights to get our names off of these lists. And that is why I started using DeleteMe. They file hundreds of removal requests on my behalf. And every month, I get a clean, simple report showing where my data was found and removed. Big fan of their work and really happy that they support good news. There's a link in my description, joindeleteme.com/goodnews. When you click the link, it helps support the channel, and you also get a huge 20% off when you use code GOODNEWS. Alright, now let's get back to the global trade of plastic waste and why it has gone down. For years, countries in the West thought they had found the perfect solution for their plastic waste. Recycling it at home was expensive, so it was cheaper to ship it abroad instead. Most of it went to China, where it was used as cheap raw material for manufacturing. At its peak, China was importing around 8 million tons of plastic waste every year. That was nearly half of all plastic waste traded globally. The problem was that much of it ended up in countries with weaker waste management systems. In Indonesia, it was burned as fuel in furnaces, contaminating the local air and food supply. China itself was struggling with the environmental damage it was causing. So, in 2018, it banned plastic waste imports entirely. And without its biggest buyer, the global trade collapsed. Western countries had to start dealing with their own plastic for the first time. 2/3 of EU countries now have deposit return schemes. Today, around 4.5 million tons of plastic waste are traded worldwide each year. That is down from a peak of nearly 16 million tons in 2016. And most of that trade now happens between high-income countries. Let's head to the Middle East. The ongoing war in the Middle East is causing immense suffering, and it has triggered a global energy crisis. Many countries are now facing rising energy costs and supply shortages. That has forced governments to rethink how they handle their energy supply. And more countries are coming to the same conclusion: energy independence. And that is pushing governments around the world to move faster on renewable energy. This is not the first time this has happened. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, energy prices spiked across the world. Governments that relied on imported fossil fuels suddenly felt very vulnerable. The IEA responded by dramatically raising its renewables forecast later that year. It predicted 76% more renewable energy growth than it had forecast before Russia invaded Ukraine. Now, the same pattern is emerging again. The head of the IEA expects this crisis to accelerate renewables as well. Leaders across Southeast Asia, Europe, and Africa have said the same. Among them, the UN's climate chief made a point that stood out. Solar and wind energy do not rely on shipping routes that can be disrupted. By the way, these are not our own predictions, but an analysis based on what the IEA has observed historically. Energy crises have pushed the world towards cleaner power before, and this one has the potential to do the same. And governments are not just investing in clean energy. Amsterdam just banned fossil fuel advertising in public spaces. That includes ads for flights, cruises, and petrol cars across the city's streets and public transport. Think of it like tobacco advertising. Most countries banned cigarette ads decades ago, because promoting a harmful product normalizes it. And Amsterdam is now applying the same logic to fossil fuels. The ban came into effect by the 1st of this month. And Amsterdam is far from the only city doing this. Several Dutch cities, including Utrecht, The Hague, and Delft, already have similar rules in place. Florence is about to become the first Italian city to do the same. And in 2022, France was the first to take it nationwide. Across Europe, more cities are making this decision, and the list keeps growing. By the way, if you're enjoying these good news stories, make sure to subscribe. This way you will never miss any good news. And now, after 8 years of negotiations, the EU and Australia have agreed on a major free trade deal. The agreement removes tariffs on nearly all goods traded between the two partners. Australian exporters gain easier access to a market of 450 million people. And Australian consumers get cheaper European wine, chocolate, and cars, among many other goods. For Europe, the deal secures access to critical minerals, like lithium and aluminium. These are essential for clean energy and electric vehicles, and Australia is one of the world's biggest suppliers. But this deal is about more than just trade. Both sides are trying to diversify their trading relationships at a time of global uncertainty. The EU has been actively building new partnerships recently. In our March video, we already covered the EU's deals with India and Mercosur. Australia is doing the same. The deal has been signed, but still needs to be approved by both parliaments before it comes into force. And over in Switzerland, scientists at CERN just made history. They have successfully transported antimatter for the very first time. Antimatter is one of the biggest mysteries in science. And I will be honest, I'm not really into physics, so I will keep this simple. Basically, everything around us is made of matter. And antimatter is its mysterious twin. Scientists believe the Big Bang created almost equal amounts of matter and antimatter. But here's the problem. If antimatter touches matter, they instantly destroy each other. So, by all logic, nothing should exist. And yet, here we are. Matter somehow won, and antimatter almost completely vanished. And scientists still don't know why. This is what CERN has been trying to figure out. But studying antimatter comes with a huge challenge. You can't touch it, you can barely store it, and moving it around is extremely difficult. At least, it was. Until now. They just transported 92 antiprotons, one of the tiny elements that make up antimatter. CERN built a specifically designed box to make it possible. Powerful magnets kept antiprotons floating in a vacuum, never touching the walls. The whole box was cooled to nearly negative 269 degrees Celsius to keep those magnets working. Then they loaded the box onto a truck and drove it around CERN's campus for 30 minutes. The antiprotons survived intact, and they are just getting started. The goal is to eventually deliver antimatter to labs across Europe, far away from CERN. Because CERN is a busy place, full of magnetic noise and interference, and that makes precise measurements difficult. In quieter labs, scientists can study antimatter much more accurately. And that could finally help answer the big question. Why does anything exist at all? And now, some good news from Chile. The WHO has officially verified Chile as the second country in the world to eliminate leprosy. Leprosy is a bacterial infection that has affected humanity for centuries. It attacks the skin and nerves. Left untreated, it causes permanent damage and disability. But it is fully curable. Over 200,000 new cases are still reported every year worldwide. And Chile has not had a single locally acquired case in over 30 years. Doctors across the country are trained to spot and treat any cases that arrive from abroad. In 2023, the WHO introduced a formal verification process for leprosy elimination. It is part of a global push to end the disease by 2030. Chile applied, and this year, the WHO confirmed Chile's elimination of the disease. Now, that is a big step forward. It is the second country in the world to do so, after Jordan. So, which of these good news stories did you like the most? As always, let me know down in the comments below. And if you want to get your data removed from the internet, make sure to try Delete Me with our link in the description to get 20% off. Thanks again to Delete Me for sponsoring this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye!